Viserys' daughter, Aegon's wife.
Yes.
Dude, one thing that she is not is your standard blood of the dragon.
No, she is
She
not.
said, "That's it right there. Take that one. That's my son. Go ahead." Then she grabs her daughter and runs to her mother.
That scene, okay. Okay.
This is why you don't hire idiots to be assassins. Like,
Like,
what were you
once again,
thinking, Damon?
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber here, joined by Laura, and we are once again in audio format talking about season 2 of House of the Dragon. Neither of us have like a very hardcore background knowledge on Fire and Blood. I've read it, but half of that material has left the building. Like, I probably can't recall a ton of it, just fragmented pieces.
I've listened to it a couple times and I can only recall like the general timeline of events from looking at the chapters.
There's so much happening in this episode. I thought the pacing was pretty good.
The
It was
pacing
like
was
chill.
great. Yeah.
Damon's, got his cloak back on, doing Damon tomfoolery. Always appreciated.
He is such a bitch ass baby daddy. He really is.
I appreciate how focused he is on Vhagar right now. Like, that's really all he's seeing in terms of an opponent. He's not really seeing them as like, oh, I'm so scared. He's like, we gotta deal with this dragon situation.
Well, I mean, that dragon really is the entire might of their forces.
Yeah.
And it seems to have a mind of its own, so... Well, she seems to have a mind of her own.
Yeah, I felt really bad for the Kingsguard guy, whoever it was up on up on the what is that called? Balustrade?
For some reason, portcullis came to mind, but I think it's just because I like that word.
Either way, they're all up there with the scorpions and they're like, dragon, dragon. Could you imagine if that was your job, having to be like the dragon identifier?
Air traffic control for dragons.
And how stressful that would be. I mean, Vhagar, her wings are just like Swiss cheese. So I guess like that's one way to identify the dragons. But man, that would be an awful job. My anxiety, I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do it. Nor could I be one of the people who mans the scorpions. Couldn't do that. It's too high stress. It's too high stress.
Imagine getting it wrong.
Exactly.
Imagine getting it wrong.
The whole time, my fear would be if I don't do this right, I'm dead.
Exactly. I'm not made for that.
No. Speaking of which, is there anybody who is a fire and blood expert that can tell us, do scorpions belong in this landscape? Were they actually invented at this time? Or is this just like an HBO thing?
Or, like you said earlier, is this like a time-traveling Tyrion thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I probably could have Googled it.
I did a little bit, and it looked like mixed opinions. Some people are like, as of, Game of Thrones TV, Qyburn invented them, but they did have them around when Aegon was out there. And other people are like, this is an inconsistency. So...
Yeah, I'm not sure. It feels like an inconsistency, but I'm also not an expert in this arena by any means.
So as far as this first episode, were there any scenes that really stuck out to you that you liked the most?
I actually really liked when they introduced the Starks and we have like a young Stark narrating what's happening.
That was really good.
It was. I do believe Kragan Stark is narrating, and we see Jacaerys go to the wall with him. Though I will say this, it was a moment where I was like, oh man, Rhaenyra really should have come to this meeting. Because as Kragan Stark is telling Jacaerys about why they hold the wall and why it's so important to the North, you can see where it really... converges into the Conqueror's dream, but she hasn't shared that with Jacaerys. So Jacaerys has no idea that he can tell the Starks, like, don't worry, my mom is here for it. Like, that's her primary focus. And if Rhaenyra had been there, they could have talked about that, which I think would have really like turned the tides for them with the North.
Yeah, because he says he agrees to getting some graybeards ready to march.
Right.
And, like the North, they're pretty adequate in terms of like fighting skills, but had they solidified that whole prophecy, death beyond the wall situation, maybe that could have like tripled their numbers.
Agreed. Also, when was the last time any of these people in this time period experienced war?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm just curious because, like, when you look at A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones, the last time people had been to war was like, what, 14, 15 years?
Robert's Rebellion.
Yeah, Viserys reigned, he had a peaceful reign. There was no war during his time. And I don't know as though there was war in the king ahead of him either.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not great with the histories, but also I like where you're going with this because I think Cregan Stark, that intro, that was great.
It was. It was very befitting of a Stark.
If you're someone who likes this, IP, if you're into A Song of Ice and Fire, you know what the wall is. You know that they send men down there, but it wasn't needed exposition, but it was nice exposition.
I think it was a nice exposition because if you're really familiar with The Song of Ice and Fire or with Game of Thrones, the wall at that point in time is where they send criminals.
Right.
Nobody cares anymore.
Mm-hmm. I liked the actor for Cregan Stark.
Me too.
I remember in Fire and Blood that Cregan, like at some point, like you get to a segment and Cregan's like an old man. And so I'm thinking, like, I wonder how far they will take this story. I mean, he's got the North, and the North comes in at some point in the story and just dominates. And, like, personally, I find a segment of the story like that much more interesting than Alicent versus Rhaenyra.
Agreed.
But also, I think since you took that one, I think my next favorite scene, which was almost insignificant in a way. I mean, it's significant, but it's not like
Okay.
super essential to the plot of this episode, is getting to see the shipyard
At Driftmark?
At Driftmark from Corley's little interaction with Alan of Hull. I really liked this little scene. Visually, it slapped. Like,
Absolutely.
the guy, like, shaving the barnacles off the side of the boat, and then you get this interaction between Corley's and this big, beefy dude. As soon as I saw him call the guy Alan, I was like, oh shit, that's one of his bastards. And I really, really appreciate that little moment where he's like, oh, I have this thing for you. And he pulls out what looks like a small sword. And he's saying, oh, that was, for Lucerys. And then it's like, oh, sad, but...
There's an undertone of contempt.
Oh, yeah. But also, I have to wonder if at some point that sword will actually go to Alan of Hull. And he is given it back. Like, if Corley's actually ends up giving it to him. Because this character does have, I believe, a somewhat important role later on. I don't know how far the television series is going to go with, like, the source material. But I do know, like, this guy sticks around for a while and he's kind of important. But I really like that actor, too. And I like how, at this point, when you see him, he's got kind of, like, the scruffy tunic on underneath. But something tells me at some point, like, we're going to see him shirtless and he's going to be jacked. He's just going to be a very beefy man.
Well, I would imagine working as a deckhand on a ship would do that to one.
Right? It was interesting, though, because he's like, thanks, you're the one who saved me. By the way, thanks. But the guy was like, just doing my duty. Well, see you later.
The actor that plays Alan does a really good job at expressing like underlying feelings in his facial expressions.
Agreed. Agreed. You know who else I think does a good job at that is Helena.
Viserys' daughter, Aegon's wife.
Yes.
Dude, one thing that she is not is your standard blood of the dragon.
No, she is not.
She said, "That's it right there. Take that one. That's my son. Go ahead." Then she grabs her daughter and runs to her mother.
That scene, okay. Okay.
This is why you don't hire idiots to be assassins. Like, what?
Like,
What were you
once
thinking,
again,
Damon?
Once again, Damon. That was exactly my thought when I watched this.
A rat catcher and a rogue gold cloak, like, or was that a rogue
City
rogue
Watch, maybe.
Kingsguard, right? Because he had the white cloak of the Kingsguard on.
City?
Yeah,
I don't know.
A fucking rat catcher and a rogue Kingsguard are your assassins, and the rat catcher doesn't actually know his way around the royal apartments. So, yep.
It was giving very Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yes.
Like,
the way that they were like, well, we can't find Aemon, so let's just kill the heir. We'll just do that instead.
they were very bumbling, like that whole scene was, I knew it was going to happen, so not shocking. But the shocking part for me is Helena taking off and she's walking, and then swings the door open and it's Alicent literally on top of Kristen Cole.
I don't understand why nobody's killed Otto Hightower yet. So many people have had the opportunity to just end him, and it just doesn't happen. And I guess I kind of get why, but I kind of hope that we see Alicent kill her own father. Some patricide would be a nice mix-up in there.
In my eyes, redeem her character because, like we talked about, she's kind of insufferable. The hypocrisy of this woman, and then she's essentially doing the thing that she disowned Rhaenyra for. But on top of that, she's also doing things like on the side, like lighting candles for the people who have died in this really hypocritical way where she's like, she wants to feel good about herself. And I think she knows she's kind of a piece of crap. She's doing it all in terms of religion. Like, oh, if I pray, I'm not so bad, instead of just making better decisions.
It's interesting to me that, like, she walks all the way to the door of telling her father, like, the only things I've ever wanted are the things that you've impressed upon me, and I'm not here for that. I don't appreciate it. And then she's like, but we're still going to go ahead with the plan.
You know what Otto Hightower scene that I really enjoyed is when he comes into the room and he sees Aemond and Cole with the map, kind of like making plans. This dude is so butt pained that someone else might be making plans without him, pulls them aside. Kristen Cole scuttles off into the dark and he sits Aemond down and he's like, you can't do this. You act too quickly. And it's like, man, you are so transparent, Otto. So transparent. Nobody can do anything without you. I get it. You're very, very important. You're a very important boy.
Right? I do get why he goes to Aemond about that, because Aemond is kind of a loose cannon. I mean, like, he makes it obvious he doesn't care about his brother. I think his real plan is the hopes that his brother dies and he somehow ascends the throne.
Yeah. And I think, too, like, there's this underlying thing between Aemond and Helena where, like, he loves his sister in a not sisterly way, it seems like. And so there's, like, a weird thing between him and Aegon. At least that was my interpretation.
Yeah, my interpretation was, like, Aemond feels like he deserves it. And Aemond, greatest sword fighter around, has Vhagar, such a badass. He has that moment at the end of, like, last season where he kind of, like, has that "it should have been me" outburst, and then reels it back in pretty quickly. But I feel like he's a little overly confident for somebody who can't actually get their giant pet to listen to them. I mean, we saw that play out at the end of the last season where you have two children whose very dangerous pets don't listen. It was like a dog fight in the sky.
Yeah, there's the whole dragon rider dragon like telekinetic bond thing going on too, where like you have to wonder if Aemon just wanted that. Like despite him being like, no, that's what he wanted, and his subconscious like beamed it to the dragon, and dragon was like, bet.
I mean, possibly, but I do think Vhagar took that flame burst to the face that Arax gave her pretty poorly. She said, "Not, you're not gonna do that. Not you.
Not today.
Not today." How old is Vhagar? Like, her skin is like falling off of her.
You saw her wings.
Her wings. She's got that like turkey gullet now.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's big, mean old chicken.
I don't want to see any of the dragons die. I mean, let me make that clear. But can't they just put her out to pasture and let her live out the rest of her days doing like fun dragon stuff? Killing livestock, possibly the occasional person.
Maybe if, the Hightowers wouldn't have staged a coup.
Right?
She could be out there living it out.
I know that this
Living
is
it up.
like from the last episode of last season, but I'm still interested in what happened between Daemon and that dragon that he went and visited.
Vermithor.
Yeah. What happened between him and Vermithor?
I think that scene was meant to kind of convey that he's doing a census now. He's seeing all of the other dragons that are out there because he's going to get together riders for them.
Okay.
For the war effort. So I think he's just kind of out and about on a walkabout counting dragons.
He could have been out on this walkabout, his dragon census, to get his daughter a dragon many years ago.
That's so unfortunate.
He's such a bad parent.
Also, like, Daddy doesn't love you unless you can ride a dragon.
Daddy doesn't love you unless you can ascend a throne and ride a dragon.
Unless you are fearsome. Speaking of Daemon's girls, I did like the one scene of Jace coming in, and is it Bela or Lena? I mix the names up, but the one daughter kind of putting her hand on Jace's shoulder, like they're there, and then Jace comes in. He's talking to Rhaenyra about all of the meetings that he's had and who's sending how many troops, and then they have that like emotional breakdown. I thought that was a really good scene.
Yeah, it was.
Honestly, I know this probably sounds kind of mean, but I'm so over Alicent and Rhaenyra at this point. I mean, I guess Daemon is entertaining because he's just Daemon is just Daemon.
He's
right?
a wild
like,
man.
Yeah. And also like he can't, again, like we talked about. So like I'm torn. This is an interesting concept here because Daemon puts together a plan, right? He's going to, under the cloak of darkness, go into King's Landing, pay these dudes for an assassination, a son for a son. But like he picked some real winners here who couldn't get anything done, and also his directions, I don't know, like could they have been clearer, or are these guys just not very intelligent? I don't know, Daemon. Like maybe it was just a Hail Mary and he was just like gonna try something. If it works, it works. It doesn't, it doesn't. I'm sure he has plenty of bags of coin to toss around.
Right.
But also like it was a plan, so I commend him on having a plan, but also did it work out? Not really.
I kind of wondered if it was like an interpretation of the only way that he knows how to be supportive.
Oh my gosh. Like when your cat kills something and leaves it on the bench is a sign that they love you.
Because I mean, we've seen him throughout season 1 and in this episode, the first episode of season 2. His capacity to be supportive is almost zero. She goes through a stillbirth / miscarriage, and then Lucerys dies like what, a day later?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you need to get it together. He's like, we've got a war to fight. And she was like, do we though? And I actually really like the scene in the last season where she tells him, she's like, my primary concern is not to sit upon the Iron Throne. It's the Conqueror's dream. And Daemon gets so mad that he chokes her.
Yeah.
So what? Now he's like out on the prowl getting dragons and killing heirs. And that's going to be like his offering of I'm sorry.
That's his love language, just killing in the name of love.
Yeah, killing in the name of love seems to be his only love language. I think him and Aemon should go live together in pure homicidal bliss together.
I mean, you have to wonder if Aemon is just like, I want to be you when I grow up. And like, that's it. They're so similar.
They are so similar.
Almost to the point where it's a little bit boring because it's just like, oh, there's two of them. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's like a second son to a royal kind of thing. If only they could see into the future. For real.
For real.
You know, I did actually really like when Rhaenys returns on Melee's and Daemon's like, get back on, we're going. And she was like, no, we're not. And he tries to like convince her. And he's like, and Rhaenys is like, too bad you're not the king. And then just walks off. Did you watch, maybe it's a little early to talk about this, but I just thought about it. Did you watch the coming this season portion?
No, but you can tell me about it.
Okay, I'm pretty sure, if my eyes were not deceiving me, that Laenor is going to make an appearance at some point.
Oh.
He has dark hair, though, but I do remember in A Song of Ice and Fire, in the books, they have Sansa is coloring her hair dark. So it's a thing. It can happen. So I was like, ooh, good move, coloring your hair. But I also wonder, like, is he coming back as a sellsword? Does he come back for honor? How does this all happen?
That would be interesting. I mean, I could see that really affecting Rhaenys in a good way, in a positive way, like if they were to interact, you know, and her get that closure.
Yeah. You know, speaking of a mother's grief, the scene where Rhaenyra is her dragon Meraxes? She flies down to Storm's End and you can see her just like standing on a cliffside, like on a cliff with Storm's End like kind of on the horizon. And the whole time I was just thinking, girl, do it. Do it. Give in to those dark impulses. Raise that to the ground. You wouldn't be able to stop me. There is no way you could stop me after losing 2 children. Nope. I'm burning Storm's End for their participation. And not like the whole town. Not the whole town. I'm not going after the small, like the common folk here.
Take the castle.
I'm going after the castle. Like, you let that asshole chase after my much younger child, and now I'm gonna have to teach you a lesson. The way that Targaryens teach lessons. Like, you can see her just standing there, and you can see like how much sorrow and pain is in her face. And then I was glad that, you know, she was able to find connecting to when Rhaenyra was talking about seeing the remains and that was, oh my God, their names.
Rhaenys.
When Rhaenys was talking about remains and then seeing Rhaenyra find the remains, even the little that she found, like it was a nice comfort for her. But I still was like, girl, do it. Just raise it. Take Storm's End down. End the Baratheon line. I mean, we know that can't happen because of later stories, but that would have been my first impulse.
I wouldn't feel bad if she raised that castle to ash, but also taking it for herself, you know, wouldn't be such a terrible idea either.
Exactly. I mean, one thing that's really been made clear throughout all the reinterpretations of the original stories is that the common folk don't actually care who sits the throne.
No. Well, you saw, I mean, all the people clapping when Aegon was the king. Everyone was like, yay, great, woohoo, you know?
Yeah, the royals... Oh, go ahead.
Well, it's just like they don't care. I mean, all right, yay. They have to go back and work in the fields afterwards anyways. Nothing changes for them.
The royals seem to have this like cognitive dissonance about how people will respond to you under threat of death. Of course these people are going to cheer and clap and yay for the king, all hail Aegon. Because what do they want to do? Do they want to get executed on spot?
Right.
The delusion that these royals have that the common people love them is wild to me.
Okay, I think this is where season 2 has potential to be better than season 1, and I think it's already headed in that direction. I
I
think I
agree.
liked I think I liked this episode more than any of the episodes from season 1,
Also agree.
but it's because I don't care necessarily about Alicent and Rhaenyra. This friendship, hatred, whatever it is, not a super compelling story, just for me. Not saying, other people out there don't love it, but I like to see the houses. I like to see the new characters. I like in this episode the introduction of some of the more like, I'm doing air quotes, like common characters, like common born, where you have like bastards starting to show up. And we've got Hugh, another character from the books that shows up in this episode. He's in the line for people asking Aegon for like different things. The one guy wants sheep, and then Hugh comes in and he's like, "Hey, we're making these scorpions. How about you pay us beforehand? Because it's a really long process." He's really important to the story too. And then, like, we've got the Starks and we've got, just more stuff going on in the landscape. I don't know. Like, there's more colorful characters starting to kind of slip into the cracks of the story. And I'm enjoying that much more than just Alicent being awful and Rhaenyra having terrible things happen to her.
Yeah, agreed. You know who I'm interested to see what their end game is Larry's.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily enjoy him as a character in the same way that I enjoyed similar characters like Varys or Littlefinger.
Mm-hmm.
But I am curious as to what his endgame here is because he's obviously already put it in Aegon's head that he needs to get rid of Otto Hightower. Like, your grandpa's got to go.
Right.
And it was a really smooth way that he planted that seed.
Absolutely.
He might be
Absolutely.
one of the most dangerous people in King's Landing just because of his ability to manipulate people.
I would agree. And also, I think that he has more potential, I think, as a character to be really engaging and interesting, especially considering in season 1, they just gave him such a weird story.
I still wish that they would pull all of that together we had talked about last time.
Yeah, like if you're going to have a schemer on that level, give them an origin story. Like Peter
Yes.
Baelish, we get the origin story. We know that he was in love with Catelyn Stark. She said no. Everything after that is him trying to be something other than what he was, right? With
Yeah.
Laris, we don't really get any type of origin story. And if you're going to have someone who's villainous or whatever, like go there, like sprinkle some intrigue in. What I did love about this episode is that you see him replace all of the servants. So, like, he comes in and he's like, by the way, I got rid of everyone who might not have been loyal to your cause. They are no longer breathing our air, and I've already filled all the positions. So now, are we to infer that he has his own contingency of spies within the castle? Because he's one of the characters I really forget from the book. So I can't say if he remains a true supporter of the Greens for the entire war. And if you're listening right now, you can tell me in the comments. I don't care about spoilers, but
He would never with Cersei.
no.
He would never take the liberties that he takes with Alicent with Cersei. No one would.
No, Alicent's just disappointing, I think. And I don't mean like disappointingly like acted or written, a disappointment of a person.
Yeah, I mean I get like how much she loves her children, but I don't know as though I feel like she actually looks out for her children. She just responds to things that are already happening.
Well, I mean, she put all of them in danger,
Absolutely.
all of them. So, like, how much do you care?
I
What
don't,
is her
yeah.
interpretation of caring?
I think her interpretation is much like her father's, that nothing matters outside of ascending the throne.
Right.
That getting a high tower into a position of royalty is the most important thing ever.
It's really, it's really goofy. She's really goofy, and so is Otto. But they're making choices.
Definitely.
I had another question for you.
Oh, let's hear it.
Did you notice anything about the intro? The new intro?
I actually did watch the intro, interestingly enough, and it seems to give a lot away.
Did you also notice that it's almost a exact repeat
Of
the
Wheel of Time
intro?
It was the first thing I thought. The first thing I thought was like, oh, they're gonna do the Wheel of Time tapestry. That's cool.
That's all right. That's cool.
Fine. But I also feel like it might be giving some things away. I planned on watching it a little later, where I can pause things and actually look at the image. But as I was watching it, I was like, oh, interesting. That makes it look like they're gonna die.
Yeah. So as we were talking, I've been going through the season 2, the next week's trailer.
Okay.
Now that I'm looking at it, the guy that you were talking about with the long hair that looked like Laenor,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's Alan of Hull's brother, Adam of Hull.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't remember if I don't know if they're like half brothers or full brothers. Again, details, hazy, very hazy. But the way that this trailer looks, we've got dragon eggs, we've got more characters coming in. I hope this becomes the thing, like Daemon out there being like, all right, who has Targaryen blood in them? Because we need dragon riders. And I want to see more dragons. Like, I want to see all of the new dragons.
Me too. It's why I'm watching the show.
Dragon consensus continues.
Yeah, I mean, they could just make an offset series where it's just Daemon doing his dragon census. And I would absolutely watch it. There doesn't even need to be any dialogue. It can just be him meeting new dragons. I like how he sings to them. I wish
in Valerian.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if he put out like his own mixtape?
Dragon Lullabies Part 1.
Wear a Cloak Part 2. Okay, here's one thing. I know we kind of talked about an inconsistency or maybe a question with the Scorpions, but also why doesn't Kristen Cole age?
I've noticed that too. He seems to be stuck in time.
Yeah. I feel like Daemon, at least, they give like different hair lengths and stuff like that to at least kind of like show that he's
changing through time.
Yeah. But I like how they recast Rhaenyra and Alicent, but and all the children, but like Otto just gets a little bit scruffier. Like he just gets a little bit more haggard looking. Kristen Cole doesn't age.
Not at all. Maybe they just kind of skipped over that because of like his role as a secondary character, but he definitely looks super young.
He looks like he's aging in reverse compared to everyone else.
I am also impressed and appalled that he's been able to keep this same energy all these years.
You mean his energy hating on Rhaenyra?
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen a character more pressed about an ex in this show.
I don't know if I've ever seen a character more pressed about an ex in television.
True. Fair.
He's made it of all time.
He's made it his life's work.
It's his whole personality at this point.
Yeah. His whole personality is falling in love with women who are unavailable and then punishing them for the perpetuity of time for being unavailable.
Yeah.
Because you cannot convince me that he actually thought Rhaenyra was going to run off to like the free cities with him.
That was goofy. That was goofy.
That was deranged. And then he gets so mad when she says no that he then spends what is now, up until this point, the rest of his life as we know it, investing his time and giving her a hard time. Sir.
So I think before we wrap it up, I have one last comment to make.
Okay.
I saw some people not liking the outcome of the death of Helena's son because it didn't feel real how she reacted, or maybe it should have been more pain, screaming, etc.
What? Why? That wouldn't fit with her character profile.
Agreed.
That doesn't
Agreed.
fit her character profile at all.
Agreed. And I also thought that I probably would have done the same thing myself. Like, I'm 5'3" on a good day. As much as I like to think that if I am in like a shadowy alleyway and someone holds a knife to my neck, that I'm gonna somehow like outsmart them or get out of it or whatever. When it comes down to fight or flight, I think she did the most logical thing, which is like grab the one kid and just like get
Bolt.
out of
Yeah.
there.
I don't know what people expected a character who has been well established as being so plagued by their gift of sight that all they really talk about is the riddles of the future. Like when she keeps saying there's a beast under the boards. Well, it turns
Mm-hmm.
out there is. It just wasn't there at that time.
Right.
So, like, to expect her to transition into what you would consider to be like, a more normal personality reaction is that would be like really inconsistent for all the character building they've already done.
I agree. And I do think too that in the books, she has to make the choice herself. She's given the option which child to save, I believe, and which one to kill. And in the show, they're like, which one's the boy? And she points. So I kind of think that they also like just did a different interpretation of that. Like she could have lied and pointed to the other kid. It didn't seem like there was a lot of time, but I don't know. Like
Look,
again,
that
I think it was fine.
the one, not the rat catcher, but the Kingsguard man that was with him.
Mm-hmm.
One area that man is smart in is crime. Because when she pointed, his first statement was, kill the other one, she's lying.
Mm-hmm.
But then the rat catcher was like, double holding, he's holding a knife with two hands. Like, the second he put a second hand on the knife, I was like, oh, you're scared, buddy. And he's like, no, I can, like, he basically is like, I can see it in her face. She's telling the truth. I do understand where the show softened the blow of the book story, where she's like, kill the boy, because it hits a little different when she's given the option of which one to kill and not just asked which one is the boy.
Also, though, like, how did the rat catcher know she was telling the truth? Like, is he a dreamer also? Did he read her mind?
I took it as it was just the look on her face. Like,
Yeah.
he could see it in her eyes that she wasn't lying or something like that. But I think that image of the rat catcher, like, holding that knife, like, with two hands will live in my mind for a while.
Oh,
I wish I could commission a painting of it.
That way, oil painting.
An oil painting.
Over the fireplace.
Yep. I love wild art. Like, that would be perfect for my current collection.
Oh, I think I'll wrap it up there. If you're listening, thank you so much for hanging out with us for this past like 50 minutes. We will be covering more of these episodes, very unserious. Like,
I'm just giving you my thoughts and my feelings.
yeah, thoughts and feelings, hopes and dreams, all of that. Like and subscribe, and we will be back next episode.